Enough is enough, and it's time for a change!
Hello, I'm not a deadbeat father. Children, of course, we're back here for another video, and of course, we want to talk about a specific WWE superstar, because of course, I have negative backlash from my previous video, talking about a specific WWE wrestler, and you know her name, I know her name, and I don't want to continue talking about her, even though those are one of my more watched videos over the previous month and a half, I think. So let's talk about Dolph Ziggler. If you don't know who Dolph Ziggler is, he'll make sure you remember. And remember every year that he's in a storyline, or he hasn't been relevant since years later, or he hasn't won the World Heavyweight title since the World Heavyweight title was actually active. So that's Dolph Ziggler. He, of course, came from the Spirit Squad. He forcibly referenced that he was a caddy for a forcibly white Chavo Guerrero, and kept saying he was Dolph Ziggler in his singles runs from like 2008 to 2009, when they finally thought of putting him in feuds. Now, these are my top 10 reasons why Dolph Ziggler sucks. Now, of course, there's been previous YouTubers that, of course, had their own opinions on Dolph Ziggler, and personally, I dislike Dolph Ziggler for the overexposure that they try to keep him on the main roster for, I guess, sympathetic reasons, or the specific term that he can get a match with anybody, and they continuously try to keep him as as like the guy who steals the show, and yet he barely gets a match of the night, or at least a main event spot. Now, there was this time back in 2013 when they were finally forcibly trying to put the belt on him, and it worked until he sadly got a concussion after a match, and he suffered and had to switch the belt over to Alberto Del Rio again. And that's number 10. Overexposure. Ziggler has no character other than he is a hard-working, good wrestler. And that works for some, but the guy has been on the main roster since 2008. Excluding the part of 2006, you're part of a faction, he had a different name. And by technicality, 2005, when he was with Chavo, or Curly White, they've been just trying to find any reason or specific reason why they're trying to make him a grizzled veteran, or they're trying to make him jealous, or they're trying to make him the guy who steals the show, or any of this bullshit. It just doesn't work. And yes, he's a good seller of a move, and that gets you somewhere, but partially telling a story or being that dependent on promos, the guy really can't sell anything to save your life. If you go to an event that involves an autographed booth and you see a few WWE wrestlers, you'll see some guys like Asuka, probably Braun Strowman, or Bray Wyatt if he takes his mask off. No one's going to ask for Ziggler. That sounds mean, but it just sucks whenever I see this dude. It just feels like, why haven't you retired or something, or made your own faction? Make something to stand out. And there goes for reason number 10 why he sucks. He has nothing to stand out. He looks like a skinnier version of Billy Gunn. He has no uniqueness on his finisher. I thought the zigzag was a fine finisher. You can catch anybody off guard. It's a quick finish, and by complete shock, you get the victory, no doubt about it. I didn't mind his matches against Kofi Kingston, Rey Mysterio, The Miz, John Morrison, Kane, anybody else. He had fine matches. That's pretty much it. Yeah, but other than he was pretty athletic, he had no other particular looks at him. He looked just like a sweaty dude, always with wet or long hair, coming around flailing like a gefilte fish. And why he doesn't get taken seriously and why he sucks, his bumping. He takes finishers like a soldier. Pause. He does take bumps, and they look legitimately like they're going to be super devastating. I got to commend Ziggler like that, actually going to sell the move, but it just feels so crap. It feels so bad. It just feels like, am I really going to think this guy's going to hold the world title? And he just flopped like I just shot him in the head with a sniper rifle point blank from GTA 5 after he just took a goddamn roundhouse kick. He took Trouble in Paradise's SOS's KO punches, AA's Skullberg spears, and jackhammers twice. F5s, Tombstone Pile Drivers, GTSs, the Rough Riders. If you saw the compilations of him taking bumps, you'll know what I'm talking about. What part of that wants to feel like a main event? A main eventer right there. The guy who just takes the punishment and doesn't feel like he's going to come back. He had his moments, yes, in Survivor Series, and he had his moment back at after Mania 29. But other than that, how are you going to get behind that? The biggest bump The Rock takes are either chair shots, big moves, and that had bigger pops. Hell, the time he flopped like a gefilte fish, he was in the main event of WrestleMania 17 against Steve Austin, and he took one of the funniest bumps off a stunner, probably in history. And nobody sells a stunner like The Rock sells a stunner. It's just sad. It's just sad. Number 7, I think we're in now. His entrance. By God, his entrance. If I see a world heavyweight champion, I see a guys who it's not for everybody. Everybody behaves differently when they're world champion. I understand it. Different character motifs. Kofi Kingston was WWE champion for several months. He still acted like the New Day, acting like a dumbass and tossing pancakes around in produce while he's holding on to the most important championship in the business. And guess what he did? Never main evented a pay-per-view. Do you see what I'm getting at? His entrance is him gyrating, either flicking his hair or just walking menacingly like he's actually going to beat the crap out of somebody. Tell me a few that actually, just tell me an entrance that was memorable about Ziggler. We of course had Rey Mysterio, his prayers, to the fans, his pyros whenever he pointed to the sky in the stage entrance, Edge's pose to make fireworks, Randy Orton's poses in his entrance with his 15-minute walk. Ziggler gyrates and twerks with the World's Heavyweight Championship while the front plate is behind his freaking back. I would slap him in the face and tell him to fix that. That's just how I feel. Number 6. Oh boy. His wrestling moves have not changed, in my opinion, since 2009. Tilt-a-whirl, a running splash, a super kick, a famouser, a zigzag that now gets a 2 because somehow the super kick is the most plausible finisher that can only work for Dolph Ziggler, even though the Usos use it, or anybody else that is below 250 pounds uses the super kick, and it just feels terrible. It just feels terrible. It just is. It's not that plausible. His moveset does not feel like it's menacing at all or intimidating. Like, wow, Shawn Michaels does a super kick. Wow, Billy Gunn does the famouser. Well, I mean, the zigzag seems like a quick and painful move. Other than that, there's nothing else menacing about him. Number 5, he cannot tell a story in his matches. I mean, the most compelling stuff that actually got me invested in the Ziggler match. I just knew he was going to drop the title later on, and it's not going to be an extensive reign because Ziggler can barely covet that he can make a championship feel prestigious. Other than he forcibly makes himself the underdog and just says his career sucked. That has to be the most pessimism ever to do that to yourself. And that's why barely anybody's going to take you seriously. I liked his feud on SmackDown for the Intercontinental Championship when The Miz was feuding with him. It was probably the most serious we were ever going to actually see two upper mid carders actually, in Ziggler's terms, steal the show for a career motive over a rematch after a rematch. And I knew his career was going to be on the line because what else were you going to cost it? And I know predictably they were going to cost Ziggler the title, and then later on they just made that for nothing. And they did the same thing for his U.S. title run. And he has multiple world title, U.S. title, intercontinental, and tag team title reigns. Number 4, he makes no championship feel prestigious. There's, of course, paper champions, and, of course, you have the legit champions. When you remember Dolph Ziggler, of course, you know his reigns for the Intercontinental Championship from, 2010, 2011. He, of course, had reigns from a recent memory. But tell me, what made that memorable? I mean, he had an okay match with Kofi Kingston back in 2010. But other than that, he has no way of elevating his championship. As soon as, the biggest thing people remember is he cashed in at Alberto Del Rio back at Raw when the World Heavyweight Championship was barely even staying in equivalent of John Cena being WWE Champion. Alberto Del Rio was so up and down in his career. And then the biggest thing they do is just give Ziggler the title, just devaluing it in presence of Dolph Ziggler. And the idiot couldn't even holding up that much because he had a concussion. It just felt so wasteful. And the best thing they could do is just toss it way back to Del Rio. I know and I understand they just did the blatant switch and turned him heel, but it just felt so rushed. And it's just that on and off factor that I just don't know why this guy never thinks of working somewhere else. If it's proven that they were just going to make a blatant switch every time they try to keep a type of motive on him, he'll just be like, steal the show, I'm a hard worker, babyface. And then he's like, I'm the best wrestler here, and I steal the show, heel. And it's just so blatantly on and off on these world title reigns. It brings no prestige. Number 3, he's a charisma vacuum. I never liked his promos. It just felt like, oh my god, Ziggler's here. I can't believe he still works here. I mean, other than his blatant screaming, no wonder this guy was stuck with Dana Brooke. Other than the athletic prowess, there's nothing into his actual skill of trying to convey a crowd for any reaction. He gets carried on by any other bigger superstar than him, and I understand that's a bigger superstar's job to try to get some of the guys from the undercard over so they can get more screen time, and Ziggler doesn't feel like he ever does that now. He's 40. He's like 40-something years old. The man still works really hard, and he has impressive matches in his career. I watched them. I can admit he's entertaining in the ring. But it just feels so blatant whenever he is on the mic. It just feels like he's just there to talk until somebody that's an actual talker gets to speak. Like, who would you rather listen to, McIntyre or Dolph Ziggler? His name even makes me want to slap him in the face. And that just never feels like a babyface. At all. The man named Dolph Ziggler should never be a babyface. Like, one time I think they called him Ziggles. A few times on television. It's like, oh, fuck, this is not a babyface. Never a babyface. And in the world, ever. Just this mole rat, grease pan with blonde hair and how to spray tan regrettably back in 2007. Like, this man does not deserve to be babyface or hold on to a world title as long as over a month. It's just depressing. Number two. His storylines are so cut and dry. It's depressing. It's like they don't really care. Remember that thing they had him with Edge and he finally won the World Heavyweight title? Then they just played a blatant switch and just made him win it just later on. I think it was on the Rumble or on the next episode of SmackDown when he was feuding with Edge and Vicky Guerrero. Then that thing with Alberto Del Rio. And then that thing with Rusev. and Lana and Summer Rae was somehow there. I wonder what she's doing. No, really, I don't care. And of course, what they're doing, what they did with him, and of course The Miz, and of course what they're doing now with him, what they did with Otis getting over off Ziggler, and now he's shooting with McIntyre. He's just a butt of all jokes. It just feels like there's never a part of him that will ever be on top. They try to put him in a program with Cena for the Money in the Bank briefcase, and I guess it was supposed to be the major heel turn here. But guess who's still going to be like asked for when he's on television? It's going to be John Cena, never Ziggler at all. And there's times, yes, there's supporters for the Miz. I mean, for Dolph Ziggler, but like no one's going to care. He has no type of uh household value when it comes to selling tickets. This sounds disrespectful, but it's business sense, it's logical sense, and it's a fan sense. I'm not going to buy a Dolph Ziggler figure unless it's just there for collection. If I'm uh I really want a wrestler I like, I'm gonna get the better one. I'm going to get Cena. I'm going to get the Triple H. Hell, I might get a CM Punk one. It's just harsh. Okay, number one reason why I think Ziggler sucks: his staying power. Over all the time of his on and off bucking, over all the time of his shoddy way of bumping, and his no way to connect anywhere, and just the sympathetic value I think that WWE just puts on Ziggler, other than the guy is pretty much a company dude, why aren't you just done? Why haven't he just thought probably I should leave? These guys barely take me as a legitimate asset to be on television consistently, or not. And I'm not even that funny to begin with. By the way, did I just stick my dick into Amy Schumer? It just feels like, it just feels like he's just there for the pay. That's it. It doesn't feel that exciting whenever you see Ziggler, and it's been several years, over a decade, and over a decade. Just feels wasted. 12 years of Ziggler. And yes, he has memorable moments, just no one cares. It's like you're just going to hear from the hardcore smarks that he has work rate, he has a good drop kick, and his matches back to Survivor Series, and of course, his moment with Mania 29, like, no one's going to remember that. It was after 29, and he didn't even have a memorable reign. And whenever people's going to remember Dolph Ziggler, it's just that he flopped like a gefilte fish. He has wet hair, and he busted open against the match against Sheamus, of all people. Oh, and he was in a dumb storyline with Rusev. That's pretty much it. I think he's just a failure up in the main roster, and one of the more wasteful homegrown talents they still have on a pretty much shoddy roster that they have in general. Everybody's gonna come in pretty much barrage me anywhere in the comment section alone from just saying that. Don't say that. This is the most talent the WWE ever had in years. Not devaluing what they had back in Ruthless Aggression, where they literally had WCW and ECW talent, and back in the 90s, when nearly just Mannequin Head can get over. Just, oh god, it just feels like they're just forcibly doing this to get any forcible optimism that there's actually legit reason why fans still watch the show. I still watch it now. I will still watch WWE. I've been watching this since I was 6. I'll still be watching this till I'm like 66 and over. It's just my opinion. You guys comment down the comment section how you think how WWE has dealt with Ziggler. Do you think he was a lost cause, or do you think that he's not that bad? There's also been videos over Randy Orton, of course, being the perfect WWE superstar when he literally been wrestling when he was like 18 years old on the main roster. Of course, he's a homegrown star, perfect wrestler for the company because he's literally been born that way. So you guys can just start dick rubbing him because it's probably twilight of his career now, and he already accomplished so much. So it makes no sense. He got literally a career like anybody would expect, but nobody asked for. And it just feels just awkward that people are just bringing this up now because he's feuding with Edge. It's just a weird timing. But that's in my opinion. Like, comment, subscribe. That's the reason why I think Ziggler sucks. If you have a different opinion, I'll be happy to comment. Read your comments in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, folks. Do that for me.